gems and trade block plays. Win today and plan for days. Waiver gems and trade block plays. Win today and plan for days. Waiver gems and trade block plays. Win today and plan for days.
Win your league, stack that bread, or start a boom and lose instead. Sunday Surefire, let's go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sunday Surefire podcast. I'm your host, Pat Martin, aka the Commish. Joining me today, as always, is my two good buddies. Starting with my main man, Aaron Downtown Brown.
Hey.
And my other boy, Ethan Weaver. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Commish, how we doing?
Doing well, boys. Doing well. We got the trade deadline upon us in a number of fantasy football leagues. Always a good milestone to get to. We can kind of see where your team's at. Hopefully, you're a contender. If you're not, that sucks in the redraft. But if you're playing dynasty, like hopefully most of you are out there, if you're listening to this podcast, then it's even if you're out of it, you can still be a seller and you can still get some future value to help you rebuild a retooling roster. And so there's no off season in dynasty, as they say. So it's important to always, whether you're in it to win it this year or you're looking to the future, making sure that you're kind of taking advantage of this time if you have a trade deadline in your dynasty league. So tonight we're going to be talking players you can buy or sell as a contender, and also some players you can buy or sell as a rebuilder. And we'll kind of just talk conceptually as well about the trade deadline. Maybe if you guys have examples of other trades you've made at the deadline that have helped you out in the past, we can talk about that. A lot to get to, folks. We are doing this live as well, so if you have questions, feel free to fire them out there wherever you're listening to our content. And we'll get out there and answer you, hopefully give you the right answer to help you win your leagues this year. So that's what we got here, folks. Aaron, I guess any kind of thoughts on the trade deadline itself before we dive into specific players?
Yeah, I love this time of year. I mean, I think you hit on it. I mean, if you're a contender, great. You might be able to make, that last move, to take you into the playoffs. And if you're not a playoff team, I think a lot of fantasy managers forget that, maybe they check out, but it's definitely not the time of year to check out. You can make some big time trades midseason or right where we're at right now. Sets yourself up for years to come in dynasty as well. So, yeah, I love this time of year.
Ethan, what do you think?
This time of year, you really got to look hard into the mirror and be honest with yourself when you look at your team. Am I a true contender or am I not? Too many teams have the hopium. They have hope is the plan, and we all know hope is not a plan, because so many teams think, oh, if I sell my first for this guy, can bring me over the top and get me in the playoffs, and then you sell your first, you don't make the playoffs, or you get knocked out first round, and now you just gave a first for a potential declining asset. So this time of year, you need to be very calculated in your approach, and you need to be honest with yourself and your team, and look at the teams in front of you. If you're in, I don't know, 5th or 6th place, and can you compete with the person in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd? Like, do you have a legitimate shot? And if not, then it maybe just get in the dance with what you have and see what you can do. But it's definitely a time of year where you need to be calculated.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, that self-evaluation, especially when you're newer in your dynasty career. You kind of bring that redraft mentality with you into your first couple dynasty leagues. And you're like, oh, I can always win. Just got to get in and give myself a chance. And maybe that's the case, but also maybe not if you've got a couple of stacked teams in your league. But it's a good time to do that self-evaluation, as Ethan mentioned, where you got to be sure that, if you're pushing your chips in, you better be damn well sure that you're a serious contender before you throw good money after bad. If you're not, if you don't have what it takes to win a championship. So that's kind of why we're here tonight. We're going to talk about some players that you can target specifically to go ahead and buy as a contender in dynasty. I guess we'll start with that, because that's always more fun to talk about here. Ethan, we'll go back to you, man. Who's a one guy that you might want to buy if you're going to win right now, or just kind of conceptually, like who you're kind of looking for in a player to buy if you're a contender?
Yeah. So conceptually, when I'm a contender, I mean, I usually like to build my teams where I'm not at the deadline giving future firsts or seconds for aging veterans. I usually like to build a young team that can contend. But I mean, I do have situations where if I can move a 3rd or a a late second for an aging running back that can maybe give me that additional depth just in case down the line one of my starters gets hurt, or this veteran's on a team that's a bottom feeder, and they would probably take a third just to get this player off their team, get some value while they can squeeze whatever's left. And a good example of that is a guy like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones right now is dominating the backfield touches and the snap share. Last 2 weeks, it was 71 to 67%. He's getting 6 targets a game the last couple of weeks. And he has a pretty favorable matchup down the stretch with Washington, Dallas, and the Giants in weeks 14, 15, 16. And he's a guy that if you can get for a third, a couple of thirds, even if you're a legitimate contender, even a late second to give you that additional depth. I mean, he's been scoring double digits the last 3 weeks. He's a guy you can look to, or a guy like that. That's the kind of that's the conceptual player that I would look to acquire as a contender, somebody that I can acquire for a lower draft pick, something that's cheap, that's not going to mortgage my future. So that's the kind of one caveat. But if I was going to kind of mortgage the future or my first round pick in 2026, a guy like, I mean, if he's available right now, because he's been having a great couple of weeks, but a guy like Travion Henderson, who has scored 5 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, has an awesome schedule down the stretch. He has Cincinnati this weekend, followed by the Giants, the Bills, and the Ravens. So he's a guy that I think is going to be heavily utilized in the Patriots backfield, and a guy with a lot of juice. So he's a player that, as a contender, I can use potentially my first round pick plus for a player like that. But it'll help me contend this year. But you're also getting a young up and coming player that's going to probably accrue in value anyways. So it's those guys are obviously very hard to acquire at this point, just because he's been playing so well the last couple of weeks. But that's kind of the way I approach the deadline.
It makes sense conceptually. You're saying if you're going to pay up for a guy, make damn sure it's a guy that you can be a core piece of your team for 4 or 5 plus years, which I think is a smart way of doing it. Of course, if you're buying Travion Henderson right now, you got to know that the price tag is going to be absorbent in order to do so, because the buy window on him was a month ago.
Exactly.
And that ship, the horse is out of the barn. But I like what you're saying in that if you are going to make that big investment in a guy, that he is someone that if you're willing to pay up, then he can pay dividends in the long run. It's funny you mentioned Aaron Jones, because he's a guy in a league that we play in. I acquired on the cheap in a league I'm contending in for 2 weeks ago, as he was coming back from the injury. It's a super flex league, and at the time Dylan Gabriel was starting for the Cleveland Browns. It was him and a 2026 third round pick for Aaron Jones, what I paid to get him.
Oh, so you got him for free.
More, like you said, we got the top. Like, some people are just willing to go out there and be like, hey, like I'll take a third. My team stinks this year. I don't have it. Anything I can get for a soon to be 31-year-old running back with an uncertain future, to say the least, is worth doing. So at least throw those offers out there to people who are contenders, if they are sitting on older players. Maybe they want to retool a little bit. So got that done according to Sleeper 22 days ago. So that was a good target. So I guess I agree with my actions on that one for sure. Aaron, I know you have at least one contender buy, and I have one as well. I guess we'll go to you, my man. Who do you got as someone that you want to target if you're in it to win it in 2025?
Sure. Just a few quick thoughts, just on conceptually, as Ethan said. Great examples there. I mean, you're either betting the farm, or you're trying to get a cheap guy that can help you win. I definitely like the Aaron Jones call out as well. You're not spending too much to get him, and he can pay out at the end for you. It wasn't just last year. I think I bet the farm on CMC at the end of the year, and then he got hurt. Right when you thought he was gonna finish the year healthy. So it can really burn you if you're betting the farm, as you said. But my guy is kind of another guy that you probably do have to give up a lot of pieces for. But I think we're seeing, we're starting to see the flashes and what we wanted from this guy at draft time, and that's Chase Brown. He's right now running back 18. He's averaging 18 points per game his last 3 games with Joe Flacco, with a 24-point game and 2 15-pointer games in there as well. But as I mentioned, he's definitely turning into that league winner we saw at the end of last season. Now that he has a little bit more competent QB play, and I guess speaking of QB play, we might even get Joe Burrow, right? So that offense could even be turning it up a notch even more here in the upcoming, next couple of weeks as well. So I love Chase Brown. His playoff schedule is Baltimore, Miami with Arizona. With that Miami week, that gets you into the ship. You really need a big week in that last week there. So I like his matchups for his playoff schedule. And yeah, like I guess just as a possible buy. I mean, yeah, you're definitely gonna have to give up a first for him. You mentioned maybe some other pieces like I don't know if somebody might bite a little bit if you do like Caleb Johnson in a first or something, but you might have to get more than one piece for Chase Brown because he is younger, as you mentioned. But I think he will be a league winner this year.
That's the interesting thing about Dynasty when you're trying to win a championship is that we in kind of in the macro in Dynasty we prioritize things like youth and guys that we will be on our teams for the foreseeable future. But then we get to this kind of weird spot in the calendar where it's like, well, who has a good run out at their position in the next 5 or 6 weeks, and it kind of morphs your thinking at least for a short period of time. So now we go beyond just thinking about young players that we want on our teams to guys that are going to score points right here and now when we damn well need them. So Ethan, what are your thoughts on that and about Chase Brown down the stretch?
No, if you can add a guy like Chase Brown to your roster at the deadline, that'll definitely help you contend or even win your championship. He's a player that if you did invest what you were projecting a late first round pick in with a little plus on top, I mean, if you win the championship, it's a no-brainer deal. But even if you don't win the championship, I'm projecting that pick would probably be a bottom 4 pick in the 2026 rookie draft. It's like, I mean, you would pay that and a little plus for Chase Brown going into next year anyways too. So he's a guy that's still young enough where if you do invest a little bit of future capital, you're still going to be able to reap the rewards for the next few years. And obviously Joe Burrow, if he can stay healthy, come back, I mean, it's wheels up for Chase Brown this year and even next year. So he's definitely a guy with his matchups down the stretch, as well as the potential Joe Burrow return, which, I mean, the reports are kind of all over the place and people are saying they might return this week, which I don't think he will against New England. But I mean, obviously with Joe Burrow at the helm for the fantasy playoffs, it could be very fruitful for Chase Brown.
Yeah, Brown's a good target. I agree. I think Aaron laid out the matchups. Ethan kind of talked about Burrow coming back and kind of raising the floor of that offense a little bit. And yeah, I mean they have good offense. They have a bad defense too, which is a great combination for fantasy. So, and that can help Chase Brown, who has the ability to catch passes too. And then he's the guy they run the ball when they get inside the 10-yard line.
He also has the ability to call out that defense too.
Yeah, he's the motivator. You guys aren't doing enough. Got to be better.
He's really motivating that defense.
Yeah. They could use a few more pep talks. They can't seem to stop anybody the last couple of years. But that's great for fantasy. If they could just keep Burrow upright on the field, keep Jamar Chase from spitting on people, and then just keep the defense bad, it would just be it's a perfect combination for fantasy. Yeah, let's keep that going forever. For my contender buy, I'm going to go. I know Ethan talked about how he likes paying up for younger guys who are going to be good for a while. I mean, if you have 2 or 3 extra first round picks sitting around, maybe a little something else to go get a guy like Henderson who's young and can be good for a while. That's a good buy. But the reality is, a lot of times in Dynasty, you got to keep up with the Joneses in your league, and sometimes that involves moving first round picks. So you don't have as much capital to work with, but your championship window is still open, and you might be sitting on your own first for 2026. Maybe that you're going to be at the 2nd or 3rd seed, and you kind of want one more little piece to put you over the top, and your pick is going to be late, and that's kind of more so the context I'm looking at this in. So when I throw this name out here, it's an older player in Saquon Barkley, and I don't think I'm really breaking any news to anybody to say that Saquon's pretty good at football. But that being said, he is RB11 so far overall this season, and that hasn't really lived up to the expectations that we had for Saquon coming into the 2025 season, coming off a phenomenal 2024 campaign where he's RB1 overall. We were kind of expecting maybe a little bit of aggression, but him to still be a top 5 running back. So I think there's some things that you can kind of throw out there when you're trying to buy him and say, hey, like you go to the other manager who's got him. Maybe they're not in contention because Saquon's not quite as good as he was a year ago. You say, hey, this guy's 28 years old. He doesn't have a massive shelf life left. Jalen Hurts continues to steal touchdowns. And he just hasn't quite looked the same this year. So maybe that can knock the price down a little bit. But the reason I like him the rest of the way from this point forward has a lot to do with the schedule he has on the run out here. Between week 12 through 17, so his final 6 games of 2025, he's got 4 matchups with teams that are in the top 10 in fantasy points allowed against the running back position. And the other 2 matchups are teams in the middle of the pack. So we'll say neutral matchups from a opposition standpoint. And what we know at Philadelphia is they want to pound the football to begin with. Like first and foremost, that's what they want to do. That's why they're having problems with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith in their locker room because they're not happy because they're not getting fed the ball enough because that's what they want to do. And that's only going to become more so the case as we get into December, those bad weather games. And I think that's going to be where they go. And I think Hurts might continue to steal some touchdowns. That's fine. I understand. That's kind of what we deal with touch push and all that. But if I'm a contender and I find myself needy at running back, I see a guy like Saquon with a really good run out. There might be a little bit of a window for me to get in there and buy him. If it's going to cost me a late 26th round first and maybe a little bit of a sweetener on top, and I need that deal to get it done, I'm willing to do it here if I really think I'm one running back away from winning a championship this year. And Saquon's 28, but I do think he's going to be relevant next year as well in Philadelphia. So it's not just a 6-week rental. Like some guys who are about to fall off a cliff, but like I think you get a year, maybe 2 or 3 years out of Saquon.
Yeah, I like the call on Saquon for sure. I mean, I think you hit on it. It's all about strength of schedule the last couple of weeks in fantasy, especially for running backs for sure. I mean, you got to look. They played the Packers and the Lions, right? Who are 2 pretty strong defenses as well. That's not really the type of games that the Eagles are going to have to finish out the year. So I like that call. I think as you mentioned, the cold weather games, all that's just in favor for Saquon to have a strong finish for sure.
No, Saquon, I think he's a great buy, especially the production that he's been giving us the last few weeks. He's definitely has not lived up to his draft capital and redraft. And obviously people who have him in Dynasty expected a lot more. But this is why you have to spam your leagues and see where players like Saquon Barkley, what teams are they on? Are they on bottom 4 teams right now? Because if Saquon is, then that's a perfect opportunity to reach out and see what his price tag is, send an offer out. Obviously, if Saquon's not a contender, they're probably not going to be moved. But that's why I think it's very key that you are active in your leagues. You look at the bottom feeders and you see what vets you might be able to pluck for a little cheaper because they're just trying to liquefy as much value as they can, as they know their season isn't going as expected.
Yeah, I think he checks the boxes if you can get him on in a league where he's available on a team that's out of playoff contention. Definitely time. I don't think many seasoned Dynasty veteran managers who are out of contention will want to hang on to him. I think they're going to know he might be good next year, but the dance is coming to an end with Saquon sooner rather than later. So he's a good guy. That's someone that a contender might or a rebuilding team might want to sell for sure. But let's go to some sells that you can make as a contender, guys. Let's talk about some players that if you're hanging on to, maybe they're not getting the job done, and you need a piece at a different position or something. Like Aaron, who are you selling if you're in win now mode?
Yeah, I picked a guy that I guess if you're in a couple, I kind of looked at it from a couple points of view, but definitely if you're a contender in a redraft format, I'm selling Juwan Jennings right now. I mean, I know he's not a huge name, but in some of those deeper leagues, or depending how deep your league is, if you're starting Juwan Jennings, you probably want to get him out of your starting lineup. He just had a couple, 12, 14, 8-point games, so he's giving you like those flex points that you kind of rely on sometimes in your leagues for starting, but. The Niners are getting a lot more healthy, right? I mean, they got Kittle back now, and Kittle's looking great. Pearsall's back, Purdy's back, and we might even get to see Brandon Ayuk towards the end of the year, possibly as well. So the Niners keep getting healthier, which means Juwan Jennings just turns into a dart throw, in my opinion. So, he may have worked to throw in as a flex spot, throughout the season for you here and there, but he was a boom player if you're relying in that position. But yeah, I definitely want to trade him, get him out of my starting lineup. And also, if you're trying to find contenders, you might be able to talk somebody into a bad trade. Get him off your team and get like a mid-second or something for him. So I'm either trading away Juwan Jennings or yeah, I guess in basically both scenarios.
Ethan, you buying or selling on Jennings down the stretch?
Honestly, if I get him cheap, I think I'd rather be a buyer than a seller if I'm a contender. I mean, if you just look at the matchups down the stretch, Brock Purdy's back. I mean, he looked good. I think this offense's ceiling is it just goes up with Brock Purdy at the helm than Mac Jones here. But if you look at his schedule in 15, 16, and 17, it's Tennessee, Indianapolis, Chicago. Like, those are pretty lucrative matchups. And I mean, I love Ayuk, but we don't know when his practice window to return is gonna work out for him. We have no idea when he's coming back. It looks like a lost season for Ayuk. So if that's the case, and you have Jennings, Pearsall's come back from injury, Purdy and Jennings have a pretty good connection. So, in my opinion, if you can get him for cheap, he's probably not a bad flex play down the stretch, considering the matchups. But I mean, if you're not a Juwan Jennings truther here, it sounds like, Aaron, you're not a really big believer of him. You're worried about the target competition. I can see where your head's at there, but I do think there might be some pretty fruitful matchups down the stretch in the playoffs where he might provide some valuable depth.
I don't want to just sit on the fence in the middle on this one, but I see what both of you are saying here. I think what it comes down to is, if you need the points that Jennings gives you, you're probably not going to sell him as a contender. Like, if he's your very last starter and the rest of your team is solid, you're going to hang on to him. But if you have depth at wide receiver and you don't need him, and he's not in your starting lineup, or you have a few more guys that, in the pecking order before you get to him, I think he is a good guy to get off of your team, because the future is uncertain with him for sure. And I think you can't really bank on very much for this season, but I think going forward, he'll get a little bit healthier. He's going to be involved. They pay him too much money not to be involved in future years. So I guess I'll kind of play that one right down the middle and say I see where both of you are coming from on that one. I guess, Ethan, when it comes to you as a contender selling, like, kind of conceptually, how are you looking to unload players if you need a little bit of help to make that final championship push?
So it's always tough to move players with, I guess, a decent amount of win now value. I do agree with the concept that you're going to be bringing up in a little bit, Kamish, but to kind of go in a little different route, a guy like DeAndre Swift, right? DeAndre Swift is a guy that I think is very his, I guess, position as the starting running back of the Chicago Bears is limited to the last few remaining weeks of this NFL season. I think they're going to bring in another back in the draft. I think Ben Johnson's going to get his guy, and I think Swift is going to be phased out somewhat of this offense. So he's a guy that obviously you're putting in your lineup most weeks if you don't have a really, really deep team. In the league that I do have him, I'm really deep. So I would use Swift and a piece to upgrade to get a more secure depth piece, or even a starter that I can add to my lineup, and use the value that Swift has accrued over the season and capitalize before the floor kind of gets ripped out from underneath, or the carpet gets ripped out from underneath him, because I don't see him as a starting running back next year, or the 1A. Maybe he's the 1B, but he's a guy I would like to capitalize on value wise. So those are the players, if I do have the depth, I like to try to piece together or move. Obviously, I'm in some other dynasty leagues where if I had DeAndre Swift in my team and I'm a contender, I'd have to keep him on my roster because I just don't have the depth. So, but that's kind of the player I wouldn't mind moving as a contender. Obviously, too, we discussed it already. If you're a legitimate contender, you look at your team. You're in first place. You have the bye locked up. I'm okay selling you first. Sell your picks. Sell your 2026 picks to go for it, because you never know. The NFL season is a long season. You're in a great position as a number 1 or number 2 seed. Injuries happen every single year. You might not get there again next year. You might think you're a contender for the next 2 or 3 years. Then all of a sudden your pieces, they start aging out or they get hurt and you're struggling. So take advantage of the opportunity you have if you are basically locked into a bye, and don't be afraid to move your firsts.
I think that's a good process too, where you have it. You have the 2026 season locked up, and you're like, okay, like I'm going to make this push to do it because I know my pick's going to be late. I know worst case, if I get a buy, it's going to be the 109 or later. So it's kind of a given, which is good, and I like that. And I think Swift's a good guy to mention both in the micro and in the macro. If you look at his remaining schedule, weeks 13 through 16, he's at Philly, at Green Bay, against Cleveland, and against Green Bay again, which are all tough run defenses. So like the micro screams sell DeAndre Swift, well, he's RB16 right overall right now, at least in full PPR scoring formats. And the macro says throw him away too, because we don't know where he's going to be playing football next. He was in Detroit. They got sick of him. They moved on. He was in Philadelphia. They got sick of him. They moved on. Chicago, it's kind of like one of those Venn diagrams. It's like you are here. Like, the last window to sell Swift before it happens again, because that's what DeAndre Swift is. He's a decent player that teams look at and say he's okay, but we can do better. And I think that's what he's been in his career. And it's what these guys don't get better with age typically at running back. So it's going to continue, I think. But you mentioned kind of my thought process that I was going to lean into here. I didn't just have one guy I was going to sell. I kind of just said collectively. I looked at rookies that were drafted in the late first round or early second round of rookie drafts in the 2025 class who aren't really popping off the page and helping contending teams right now. So these guys conceivably could be on your roster if you drafted late in 2025, or maybe you move back a little bit into the second round. So it's guys like Caleb Johnson, Jaden Higgins, Matthew Golden, Trey Harris, players that other people really liked him as prospects and they haven't gotten off yet. But maybe some guys that still have a little bit of shine on them because they are rookies, and people say, oh, this rookies break out in the second half of the year. I like this guy's metrics. I remember looking at him after the combine or after the draft, and I think they're guys that you can kind of float out there, and maybe you attach some additional future draft capital on top of them to go get a final piece that you need. At least, send those offers out to see what it'll take. And admittedly, you are selling low on these guys, and that might be a quote unquote bad value thing to do. But it's winning time, guys. Like, don't leave yourself short at this time of the year for the reasons Ethan mentioned, where you don't know how long your window is going to stay open. So just at least be open to doing that. Don't just stay with these guys because, like, oh, I drafted him at the 112 last year. It's like, okay, that's great that you left in the 112, but like, are you going to, like, you trade the 112 for a championship every single time if that's what it takes? And I know that's not a guarantee. It's hard to say. I'm kind of projecting out a little bit here when I say that, but you gotta know when your window's open and when to go for it. And I'm not saying do anything reckless here. I'm not saying like go trade like someone like Mason Taylor, who was a second round pick, and something else on top for a guy like Travis Kelce, who's got like 6 weeks left in his career. You got to be smart about it when you do it. But if you can go get a difference-making player in your lineup, I think it kind of would behoove you to do that, especially when you don't know how long your window can be open in Dynasty, Aaron. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think especially when you're talking running backs too. I mean, you can even have different strategies per position too. It's all the framework you gotta think about, especially selling. I mean, if you can afford to get them off your team, depending on you're trading up, upgrading that position. I try to kind of look ahead. Okay, does he have at least another? Even go back to Barkley. Yeah, he's getting older, but he's got more years on his contract, right? It's kind of like the time of year to maybe definitely double check contracts before you send trade offers. Because running backs just they're pretty cutthroat these days in the NFL by their contracts too. So especially even in the DFS world, you talk Swift as well. I mean, Monungai is getting more reps as well, and goal line work too. So yeah, look at the position, look at the contracts this time of year, and make your move one way or another.
I think you're muted there, Mesh.
Pesky mute button comes out of nowhere. Appreciate you, bro. But yeah, we're talking contender buys and sells right now in Dynasty. We're going to get into rebuilder buys and sells here in a second. We have a few viewers out there. If you have questions about your team specifically, toss them out there, whether it's Dynasty or redraft. Happy to answer any questions that come up as we go along here. But yeah, we'll round into what it looks like kind of buy and selling at the deadline as a rebuilder here, Ethan. But any other thoughts on Aaron's last points or anything else before we kind of transition into that?
No, I think it's time to transition to rebuild mode here.
Rebuild. Rebuilding is inevitable in Dynasty. We've all been there. Where
Never been there, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. Never been there.
Yeah.
Always a contender.
That's Ethan Pinocchio Weaver over there. I've been playing Dynasty for 10 years. I've never had a bad year, bro. Those are the people who you stay far away from, folks, because they're lying to you. Or they haven't played Dynasty long enough yet to know that things are cyclical. Even the best Dynasty players go through rebuilds eventually. I like to do them in years 1 and 2 personally, but that's a whole nother episode that we could get down. Yeah. Whole other concept, and we will do that this offseason. So make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button for the offseason building mode, which is fun. But right now we're talking like as what you should do when you're here on the map at the trade deadline as a rebuilder. So we kind of think in a rebuild, like you should definitely be, you should sell away vets. We kind of know that. That's basically a good idea, a good strategy. But there's also a buying window for players, certain types of players as well at the deadline, Ethan. So talk to me kind of like if you're in a rebuilding team, like what type of activity are you looking to pursue at this point in the calendar?
The first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at the top 6 teams, 7 teams, 8 teams, whoever's right there in the playoffs, on the cusp of the playoffs. I'm looking at their players on IR. That's the first thing I'm doing. Guys like Malik Neighbors, Tucker Kraft, Scadaboo, guys that can't help them this year, especially those legitimate contenders, and seeing if I can get them for a little cheap, sell off my potential veterans, and try to get them at a little discount. Obviously, guys like Neighbors, they're always going to be cheap. Always going to be very expensive, but you might get a slight discount. So it's always good to kick the tires. But then also, I'm looking at underperforming rookies. Like, can I get Caleb Johnson for very cheap? And I may be able to get him for, maybe get him for a second, which a lot of people will probably give Caleb Johnson in a heartbeat for a second. I wouldn't give my personal second, but maybe if I had some of the contenders seconds or a late second or even an early third, I'd try that. So guys like that, or guys that I think are going to have a lot more opportunity next year that might not be performing great. Guys like Zach Charbonnet, he's doing okay, but he might be the starting running back in Seattle next year. Obviously, there's a risk if they bring back Kenneth Walker, but he's a guy that you can get much cheaper today than if Walker walks next year and Charbonnet's the RB1 there, or guys like going back to the injured guys that really didn't perform at all. That a guy like Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen you could probably get for very cheap if Breece Hall walks. Braylon Allen gets the opportunity. Now you're getting a guy that's going to be increasing in value like crazy. So that's kind of the players I target, and also underperforming what we studs, right? Like Brian Thomas Jr. Can I get him a little cheaper on a team? So that's if like as rebuild mode, you're just trying to get value. You're trying to acquire guys that you think can take a leap in value in a few months or a year, and kind of go that route.
Ethan, I love that. You kind of like, a lot of things that us, fantasy managers do around this time, especially the trade hungry ones. You like hit on every point, right? So I love, that you literally did everything I've done the last like week or so. Like, oh, okay, let's look at injured reserve. Let's see if I can try to get Neighbors. Let's try to get this guy, that guy, right? I think I tried to get Charbonnet from you just like a week or so ago. So yeah, like great points there. I'm gonna like try to dub what you just said. That can be a whole video in its own. I love that. Yeah, you might be popping Chardonnay for getting Charbonnet if Walker walks, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I love it. I really think you hit on like all the key points. Try to get one under. You got to kind of look into the view of those other teams, feelings and how they feel about their players if they're injured or underperforming. Yeah, try to take advantage of that right now at this time of year. So that's, I think, ultimately kind of the point you're getting at is like, look, imagine if you're that other dynasty owner. Okay, if I see a trade inbox come my way for these guys, am I likely to hit accept? Give it a shot. Shoot your shot.
Shoot your shot. Got to be a shooter at the deadline, man. That's for sure. You'll never get a trade done if you don't send the shot out there. What's the quote? You'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
Got to be a shooter. There's nothing worse than guys who are afraid to send offers in dynasty leagues. So don't be that guy. Everyone hates that guy. But yeah, good points from Ethan's perspective. I think that's the process that you should be going through when you're in a rebuild mode. Guys that you should definitely target here. Aaron, is there anyone specifically that you want to target in this situation?
There is. So one guy in specific I want to bring up is Troy Franklin. He's actually wide receiver 23 right now. Definitely emerging wide receiver. For the upcoming years, couple, hit on, check a couple of those boxes that we look for. He actually now leads the Broncos in targets for the year, passing Sutton as well. So I really think he's emerging to be, Bo's long-term option for the Broncos for years to come. They got that college chemistry, and I think it's just showing in the pros as well. But, I think this time of year too, I know he's kind of made a little bit of noise, but, he's still only averaging like 10, 11 points per game. So he's not really like, your key milestone win now piece to where I still think you can sneak some trades away to get Troy Franklin on your team. If you have like I think Devontae Adams is probably like the perfect player if you got like a vet like that or like a Diggs or something like that. As we know, but yeah, try to take a shot on Troy Franklin. I think he's got tremendous upside in the years to come with Bo. As Bo grows as well, I think they're gonna just grow together. So Troy Franklin is my rebuilding buy tonight.
Ethan, you targeting Troy Franklin if you're in a rebuild?
I am. I like that call and Troy Franklin because I think his value is not going to go up. He is the wide receiver 1 right now in Denver. I mean, if I had Sutton and Franklin on my team, which I do in redraft, which I had in redraft for like a week before I dropped Franklin, which I should have kept on my team. I'm starting Franklin over Sutton every single week going forward. He's getting the targets. Bo Nix is looking to him, and I mean he's 22 years old, a second year. Chemistry, obviously, with his college quarterback. He's fast. He's 6'3". He has a lot of opportunity to grow. It's kind of funny. Just right before this episode, Troy Franklin actually got moved to a rebuilder in one of our dynasty leagues that we play in together, and it was Troy Franklin and Parker Washington for Tajay Spears, Naylor, and a 26 second. That 26 second is actually commissions, which is projected to be bottom 4. So I'll take. I mean, at that price, I'll move.
Smash.
I'll move a late second. Tajay Spears, a guy that hasn't shown anything. I like his potential, but he's going to be going into a second contract. Basically, I don't know. Not making much money because he hasn't shown anything. And right now he's currently in the worst offense in the league. So I thought that was an easy accept for this rebuilding team. And like I said, Troy Franklin is a guy that I think can increase in value quite a bit this from today to next year. So he's a guy that I think you can get much cheaper right now on November 19th than you can come August or September of 2026.
I think he's a good target too. I liked Franklin coming out. What I didn't like about him entering this year is that they signed Courtland Sutton to a 4-year, $92 million extension in July of this year, just like 6 months ago, or 4 months ago. So it's like that's kind of like so I was on the Troy Franklin bandwagon, then I was off it, and now it's like, oh, I guess I should hop back on. Yeah, remember what I said about him coming out 2 years ago? Like, forget about all the stuff in the middle. But no, that's a good call too. I mean, I think Sutton's still going to be there based on the contract they gave him, but I think that Franklin just as time goes on is going to emerge as the top target there. And you have to figure they'll get Bo Nix more comfortable in that offense as they go forward. Sean Payton will figure out ways to utilize his best skill players like he always has, and I think Franklin is a good buy if there is still a little bit of juice there to be had, and hopefully you can continue to grow in value if you do buy him as a rebuilder. One guy I want to buy as a rebuilder, and this guy is more expensive for sure, but he's a guy who's injured as well. So kind of targeting the same process that Ethan talked about, and that's Sam Laporta. Him hitting IR was kind of a shock to me last week. Ethan and I were together when we got the news, And I was like, oh, that's great. Like I have this guy in a league where I'm contending and I'm a strong contender for a championship. And it's like, oh, great. That's a gut punch because like I kind of thought he wasn't going to play in week 11. And then all of a sudden he's not going to play for the next 4 weeks. So who knows what he looks like when he comes back for the fantasy playoffs. So I think you can kind of use a little bit of that chaos to your advantage if you are a team who's rebuilding and looking to acquire some future pieces. Because if you're rebuilding and you're out of it in 2025, you don't care if Sam Laporta doesn't produce for you this season. And it's actually preferable if you have your own draft pick that he doesn't produce for you for the remainder of the season, which makes him a perfect target for me if you find yourself in that situation, because it kind of creates a situation where if you're like me, you're a manager who's like, okay, I'm contending, I'm good to go. And then all of a sudden you have a big void in your lineup, especially in these tight end premium formats. And it just creates a buying opportunity that rebuilding managers can exploit. And I know, like Laporta, it's not going to be cheap. You're getting him for. You're still going to have to pay a decent amount for him. But I think it might be a good time to unload a veteran tight end who's a little bit longer in the tooth and maybe not as productive, and maybe another marginal piece along with that veteran tight end for a 24-year-old stable producer in the form of Sam Laporta. So if you're holding on to someone like Dallas Goedert, maybe you can package up a late first with that and send it out. Maybe that gets at least some traction going. Maybe gets you a counteroffer from the opposing manager. And maybe the contending team is desperate enough just to pull the trigger outright in an effort to kind of save their winning season. They see Goddard producing as a top 6 tight end, and maybe they just say, you know what, screw it, I want to win right now. I'll figure out a way to replace Laporta in the long run. And it's a deal that you make that you, as soon as you become a contender, you flip that switch, you look back and say, this was one of the deals that made me the contender I am today, because I was willing to give up on another tight end and maybe another piece in the process a couple of years ago.
No, I like that call, and it goes. It goes in lockstep with what I was just talking about with the strategy I was laying out with the look for the players on IR that can't help these contenders. But not to switch gears back to Troy Franklin, but our guy Ernie is in the chat here, and his ears must have been ringing because I just brought up his trade that I had to beg him to accept for Troy Franklin. But no, that's a great move, Ernie. Welcome to the chat. But Sam Laporta, like I said, he's the exact guy that you're looking to acquire, somebody that can't help a contender right now. And if you can send a guy like Goddard, who's been producing very, very well in Philadelphia, like the only guy that is producing, I think that's a no-brainer.
I like it. I think that's a great trade example too. As you mentioned, a guy that's on IR who hurt earlier too. That's the exact strategy you do, right? Especially with Goddard still putting up numbers. That's a great trade comp there.
While we're talking Dallas Goedert, I think this is a great segue to go to Sells as a rebuilder. He's actually my guy that I called out here. So I'm just going to hog up all the air in the room here for a little bit of time, which is
wait. Before you hog all the air, before we move out of buys, as a rebuilder, what is the number one asset that you need to have on your roster?
You're on future draft picks, first round picks.
Yeah, amen. So if you don't have your 2026 first and you think you're going down the toilet, you better do what you can to acquire. Just have to put that out there.
I agree. It should be if you don't have it, it should be the first thing that you target, and you should try to do everything you can to get it back.
Correct.
If you can't get it back, yeah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't rebuild still. Like I did this in one of our longtime dynasty league Ethan and I have played in, and we're in year 9 right now in this league. And this was me. I was a contender for 6 years. I made it to the semifinals 6 straight years. I won a championship in 2023. I think I beat a guy named Aaron Downtown Brown in that final.
Who's that?
I think that's what happened. I don't know. But it was like so in 2024, I didn't have my own pick, and I was like in 25. I'm like, all right, I just got to get one more year out of this before I have my own picks. I can start over. It didn't happen. Like every single guy I had got hurt. My team got old. It just blew up on me overnight 1 year early. Didn't have my own first round pick. Tried like hell to get it back. Couldn't do it. I still hit the reset button anyway. And my pick ended up being the 101. Someone else drafted Ashton Genty, and it wasn't me. But what it did get me was 10 future first round picks. It was just set my rebuild around. So it's good advice from Ethan, where you should absolutely target your first round pick and go get it if you can. If you don't have it and you want to kind of turn that corner from a contender or a middle or to a rebuilder. But I also say if you can still get good value while you're out of it, you should still do it, even if you don't have your future pick. But I think overall that kind of checks out, Ethan. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%, yeah. So, hey, now take all the time you need. The floor is yours, Kamish.
All right, we got like 3 or 4 more hours for this take, so everyone buckle up. Clear your schedules for tomorrow. So if you're selling in a rebuild here, I just kind of talked about Dallas Goedert. No surprise here. That's what I'm going to bring up. This one might be more of a tight end premium thing, but I just think this is likely the final time with Goddard you're going to be able to get anything of real value for him. I just look at him, like I said earlier, currently tight end 6 overall in the season. He's tight end 8 on a points per game basis, which puts him on pace for by far the best season of his career. And that scoring spike has been fueled by touchdowns, of which Goddard has 7 scores in 9 games played this season. Those 7 scores are tied for first in the league among tight ends with guys like Jake Ferguson and Trey McBride. And Goddard's previous career high was 5. So it kind of checks out that that's why he's producing, because if you look at his other stats, he's just 14th in tight end receptions and 17th in receiving yards, which indicates that the tight end run is when it dries up, the production is going to come down for Goddard as well. So I think he's kind of at the stage where he's 30 years old this year. You know, there's life left in him as a tight end after 30, but if you're rebuilding, you've gotten the best years out of him in all likelihood. It's time to cash in on this big season, especially with so many injuries to guys like Tucker Kraft and Laporta at the position, which creates an opportunity for teams that didn't need tight ends 2 or 3 weeks ago that now do need them. So it's kind of just a perfect storm to cash out on Goddard while you still can. And if I had him in spots where I was rebuilding, I would be kind of trying to get him off my roster for the best return I could.
No, I like the call. I mean, like we said, Dallas Goedert's producing very well in that offense. Jalen Hurts loves him right now. So, I mean, if you can move off a guy at his age where his dynasty value is just it's kind of in free fall at this point, even though he is producing, it's a perfect guy to move on.
We got a comment or a question alert here from Jackie Brockert, Kamish. Fantasy question. So it's perfect segue because we're talking tight ends, talking Goddard. In first place, needs a sneaky tight end. So I'm guessing, if, like a tight end, a waiver wire tight end. You got any waiver tight ends that you want to pick up? I know this is like a very common because a lot of owners are streaming tight ends. You got the Pitts, Jawan Jennings. You got people like that. What do you guys think for a streaming tight end option?
I mean, I see Jawan Johnson readily available in a lot of leagues. I don't know why he's been producing very much this year, guys. Even the guys like Theo Johnson, Jackson Dart has been peppering Theo Johnson the last few weeks. I think he's a back end tight end one almost every week at this point. Kate Otten right now has been dominating targets. Those are 3 guys that I see readily available at times on the waiver wire. So those are guys that if they're available, they're guys I'm very comfortable putting in my lineup.
One more just came to my mind. So going back to Ethan's strategy is especially in redraft leagues when players get hurt or go on IRs, maybe Brenton Strange as well.
Yep.
He was one that was in the offense quite a bit, and he's going to be coming off IR pretty soon. So Brenton Strange might be a sneaky play as well.
I got one too I'll throw out there. This guy's almost certainly on the waiver wire, and he probably shouldn't be because he's played 10 games this season. He's been a top 12 tight end in half of them. Exactly 50%. Who is it?
AJ Barner.
AJ Barner, Seattle Seahawks tight end. Yeah. He's just 15% rostered on Yahoo leagues. Oh, and I'm sure it's similar on CBS or ESPN and wherever you're playing. But he's a guy that is very much out there in a lot of leagues, and he's he's a little bit boomer busty. He has some really low scores on his on his track record. But if you're punching up on an opponent, like if the team's better than you and you need someone who can get you more than 3, 4, 5 points, some of these other guys are going to get you. He actually does have some upside in good matchups, and he has a couple decent ones down the stretch. So Barner's a guy who's probably out there. That's my kind of desperation target at tight end if I need a guy.
That's a great call, AJ Barner. I think he had 10 for 70 this past week. He was a PPR machine.
Yep.
So
exactly. 11 targets.
Yeah, I love that call.
And 2 rush attempts.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden value up there for sure. Aaron, did you have anyone else you want to talk to as a rebuilder cell in Dynasty before we kind of close it out here?
Yeah, I do actually, and this might seem a little hot takey, but it's one strategy we
Oh
actually
boy,
haven't quite
buckle up.
we haven't quite covered. I think Kamish, you might have hit on it where, um, if you got teams where you just wanna start over, you just want to rebuild. Sometimes you got to give away good talent too, right? There's not always just aging vets. You never know what you're gonna get on return if you put them on the trade block. And my guy is Chris Olave. Right now, he's wide receiver 12, so you can call him a WR1 this year. You got a lot of bargaining lingo you can use. Where Shaheed just got traded. He's gonna get tons of targets. He could help a contender win a championship, right? So I think Chris Olave is a guy that I would entertain selling because you might be able to get a huge return with, right? He's still not too old. He's getting in a groove, right? I mean, I know a lot of managers were worried about his injury history too, and he's overcame it this year in 2025. So I think it's an opportunity to just see what you can get as a return for Chris Olave. Um, and see how many picks. Maybe you can get two first for him. And the way I look at Olave is I do think he's a good wide receiver. I think he's got years ahead of him, but I mean we know what trading pieces and where New Orleans is at. They're gonna get other pieces. I'm not sure if he's gonna be the alpha over there in New Orleans. I think they're gonna try to extend him, but either way, I think sometimes in dynasty you do have to trade good assets, performing assets, to get a huge return back too. So, I think one comes to mind is, I trade away Zay Flowers. I kind of looked at him similar last year too, where I was like, hey, is Zay Flowers really going to be my missing piece to a championship or not? So, he's kind of like my Zay Flowers of 2025 is Chris Olave. So, um, uh, just one strategy I say that you can try to shoot for.
Yeah. If I can get two first for Olave, he's off my team. But yeah, bye bye. But I do, to your point, he is producing very well this year. And honestly, I 100% agree with you for the fact in terms of the sell window now. This is the perfect time to sell a guy like Chris Olave, where people are just looking at the next few weeks of this season, right? If you're trying to win a championship and they're just looking at 2025, they're not thinking about Chris Olave's long-term concussion issues. So I think to sell a guy like Chris Olave, this is the perfect time because people are looking in a more narrow lens. They're not looking long-term. I mean, Chris Olave, knock on wood, and thankfully for him, he hasn't got a concussion this year, but all it takes is one more concussion to all these questions to start to come up. And nice, Jackie picking up AJ Butter. Nice call, Commish. Nice call.
Love it. We'll see. Hopefully it pans out. But that's what we give on the show, folks. We give actionable advice. Jackie, if it doesn't work out, please don't remember this call. But thank you for being a loyal listener, Jackie. Jackie listens to a lot of our content, so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And just to put a bow on Olave, like I said, I think you want to sell. If you were looking to sell him, now's the time, I think, because like I said, people are looking at the short term and people are mostly worried about the long term with Chris Olave.
Great call. That's essentially exactly what I was going to say on Olave. So, Aaron, it's a good call on your part. Two first, obviously, is a no-brainer. I don't think you're going to get that for Olave, honestly. But even if you can't get that for it, it's fine.
Right.
And he's another guy that I wouldn't be afraid to add a little bit more on top of to go to upgrade at the position, go get a safer guy in the long run for the health reasons, and it gets him away from the Saints too. Like, I don't know what the hell the Saints are going to do with the quarterback position. Like, maybe it'll be a struggle there for forever, like it was before Drew Brees got there. Who knows? So, yeah, great call out. Ethan, I won't reiterate Ethan's points, but I think he's a good call out for sure. Guys, any final thoughts here on trade deadline week at all before we wrap up?
Yeah, just to kind of keep piggybacking on the Olave type trade. It's a good caveat. It's like you don't need to just sell these players for future picks. I think another strategy is to move volatile assets for more stable ones. So Chris Olave long term is a little volatile. Obviously, things are trending in the right direction for him, but if you're concerned long term, use the production that you see now, put a little sweetener on top, and go get a more stable asset. So I think that's a direction a rebuilder can go into as well.
All right. Totally love where your head's at on that one. I think this was a good episode to run it down. Folks, again, make sure you're hitting that like button, that subscribe button. Make sure you're not missing any of our content. If you have any future questions on trades or anything else, hit us up. We're definitely out here to help. And until next time, peace.